The Strait of Hormuz, 21 miles wide, and right now, the most dangerous 21 miles on the planet. President Trump has launched what he's calling Project Freedom, deploying U.S. naval forces to escort stranded ships through the strait after renewed Iranian-backed attacks on commercial vessels over the weekend. Iran has responded with a direct threat. Any foreign armed force that enters the strait, they say, will be attacked. Oil prices are already moving. The world is watching. Joining me now are Sophia Reeves, our economics and markets editor, and James Chen, our geopolitical analyst. Sophia, let me start with you. Is this the decisive show of strength the region has been desperate for? Or is Trump walking America into a confrontation nobody is ready for?
Thanks, Emma. Look, let's be clear about what we're actually talking about here. This is the 20% of global oil supply that moves through this strait every single day. 21 million barrels. The Iranian regime has spent years harassing, seizing, and attacking commercial vessels, and the international community's response has been to convene panels and issue strongly worded statements. Trump's Project Freedom is the first adult response to Iranian maritime aggression we've seen since 1988. And I'll tell you what Trump understands that Jake Sullivan and the entire Biden national security apparatus never grasped. Iran does not respect concession. It never has. Douglas Murray has been making this point for a decade. You cannot negotiate peace with a regime that interprets every concession as proof that more aggression works. The Navy needs to be in that strait, the rules of engagement need to be ironclad, and if Iran tests it, the response needs to make the cost unambiguous. What I'm worried about is whether the implementation is as resolute as the announcement.
But, Sophia, here's what the critics are already saying. Iran has explicitly threatened to attack any foreign armed force that enters the strait. Are we seriously comfortable putting American sailors in the direct line of fire in a conflict that is still ambiguously defined? And James, what's your take on this?
Well, look, I agree with Sophia on the destination, but I think she's underselling the implementation risk here. Al Jazeera and others are right to flag that it remains genuinely unclear how this operation will be executed. What are the rules of engagement? Which assets are deployed? What happens when, not if, an Iranian fast attack boat buzzes a U.S. escort vessel? Here's what the data actually tells us. The Houthi campaign in the Red Sea, which Iran funds and arms, already forced Maersk to reroute around the Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks to transit times and tens of millions in costs. Markets have been pricing in Gulf instability for months. The economic damage is real, and it's already happening. But announcing Project Freedom without an airtight operational framework is how you get a Tonkin Gulf moment, an ambiguous incident that escalates faster than anyone in Washington planned for.
I hear what James is saying, but with respect, that completely misses the point. The ambiguity isn't Trump's failure. It's deliberate strategic signaling. You don't telegraph your rules of engagement to the enemy before the operation starts. Iran is a regime that has seized over 24 foreign-flagged vessels since 2019. Over 24. At some point, the argument that we shouldn't project strength because it might provoke escalation becomes an argument for permanent paralysis. Iran is already escalating. It escalated last weekend with fresh attacks on commercial vessels. The question isn't whether America acts, it's whether America acts decisively enough to actually deter the next attack. And I'll say this plainly. The Biden years taught Iran that American red lines come with erasers. Trump has to burn the eraser.
Here's what I want to know, and this is the question that keeps me up at night. Operation Earnest Will in 1987 worked, but that was a different Iran, a different geopolitical moment, and frankly a different American attention span. If this drags into a prolonged standoff and the first Iranian test comes, does this administration have the domestic political capital and the strategic nerve to follow through? James, where do you see this going?
The way I see this playing out, and I want to be careful here because there are real divergent paths, is that we're heading into a testing phase over the next several months. Iran's most likely move isn't direct confrontation with U.S. naval forces. It's proxies, harassment, ambiguous incidents designed to probe the administration's resolve without triggering a full military response. If Trump holds firm through that testing phase, the trajectory suggests a new deterrence equilibrium emerges. If political pressure at home or an unclear incident at sea pushes the White House toward de-escalation before that equilibrium is established, we're back to square one. Except Iran has learned something very valuable about American resolve. That's the real risk here, not the opening move.
Here's what concerns me most, and I think this is the scenario everyone is dancing around but won't say directly. If Iran miscalculates, if the Revolutionary Guard decides that one direct engagement with U.S. naval forces is worth the propaganda value domestically, or that they can create enough ambiguity about who fired first to limit the American response, that's when this gets genuinely dangerous. History tells us that the distance between a maritime incident and a regional war is measured in hours, not weeks. The Gulf states are watching, Israel is watching, China is watching to see whether American commitments mean anything. If this operation succeeds, it doesn't just free stranded ships. It restores a deterrence architecture that Biden spent 4 years dismantling. The stakes are that large.
Sophia Reeves, James Chen, one of the most consequential naval operations in decades, and the whole world watching to see whether American strength is back for real or whether it's another headline waiting to be walked back. One thing's for certain, somewhere in Tehran tonight, someone is doing some very uncomfortable math.